Officer Frank Miller and his partner Diane Powell were patrolling Sector 7 of New Horizon Colony when they got an alert about someone entering a restricted laboratory without permission. The year was 2157, and Earth had built several colonies on other planets where humans lived with different alien species. New Horizon was the most important of these colonies, known for its advanced research buildings and mixed population. Another break-in at Quantum Labs, Officer Powell sighed, typing commands into the patrol ship's navigation system. Probably those Zentari kids again. They never learn. "Let's just get this done," Miller replied, his face hardening as they flew toward the shiny research complex. When they arrived, they found Dr. Amara Washington standing outside the main entrance, her lab coat stretched over her 8-month pregnant belly. As the lead alien biology expert at Quantum Labs, Dr. Washington had permission to enter any part of the facility at any time. However, Miller had always disliked humans who worked closely with alien species, thinking of them as traitors to their own kind. "Ma'am, we got reports of someone entering without permission," Powell began, her tone professional but cold. "I have permission to be here," Dr. Washington replied calmly, showing her ID chip. "I'm doing time-sensitive experiments on cell healing that needed my immediate attention." Miller scanned her chip very slowly. "System says you're on maternity leave, Dr. Washington. That means your lab access is temporarily stopped." "That's wrong. My leave begins next week. You can check that with Director Hammond." Miller looked at Powell. "It's 3 a.m., Doctor. No one's available to check anything. We'll need you to come with us until this is figured out." "This is ridiculous," Dr. Washington protested. "My research is at a critical stage." "Ma'am, please don't resist," Powell cut in, reaching for her restraints. "It will only make things worse." Before Dr. Washington could say more, Miller roughly grabbed her arm. "You people always think you're above the rules," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. As they led her to the patrol ship, Dr. Washington stayed calm, her brilliant mind already making a plan that would change the colony and humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The holding cell at New Horizon Security Station was made to hold various species, but it offered little comfort to a human woman in the late stages of pregnancy. Dr. Washington sat on the hard bench, her back hurting, as she watched the clock on the wall tick away precious minutes. 6 hours had passed since her arrest. 6 hours of being ignored when she asked for medical help. 6 hours of watching Officers Miller and Powell process other prisoners, mostly non-humans, with the same dislike they had shown her. Dr. Washington knew what was happening. New Horizon Colony had been seeing growing tension between the original human settlers and the increasing alien population. The security force, mostly human, had gained a reputation for harsh treatment of non-humans and humans who supported alien rights. As the colony's most prominent alien biology expert, Dr. Washington had often spoken out against such unfair treatment. Her groundbreaking work on medical treatments that worked across species had earned her praise throughout the galaxy, and enemies among human first believers like Miller. "Dr. Washington?" A young officer appeared at her cell, looking uncertain. "I'm Officer Kyle Bennett. I've contacted Director Hammond. He's not happy about your detention." "I imagine not," Dr. Washington replied evenly. "Especially since I'm in the middle of testing a universal antibiotic that could save millions of lives across multiple species." Bennett swallowed nervously. "Ma'am, I need to tell you that Officers Miller and Powell have filed charges claiming you were trying to release restricted biological compounds from the lab." Dr. Washington's eyes widened. "That's completely made up." Bennett lowered his voice. "I believe you, Doctor. But they've taken this to Colonial Security Chief Lawson, who's approved extending your detention for another 24 hours. Dr. Washington closed her eyes briefly. Chief Lawson was known for his human-first policies. This was no longer about a misunderstanding. It was deliberate persecution. "Officer Bennett," she said quietly, "I need medical attention and access to communication. Both are my rights as a citizen of this colony." Bennett hesitated, then nodded. "I'll bring you a communication device. It's the least I can do." As he walked away, Dr. Washington placed her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick strongly. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "Your mother isn't just any scientist. I'm about to show these officers exactly what happens when they underestimate a pregnant scientist with friends throughout the galaxy." The communication device Officer Bennett smuggled to Dr. Washington was basic but worked well. As a senior researcher with the highest security clearance, she knew exactly how to bypass the station's monitoring systems. Within minutes, she had established a secure connection to an unlikely ally, Ambassador Zekathar of the Galactic Union. Dr. Washington, the ambassador's see-through form flickered in the small holographic display. "Your distress signal was received with great concern. The Galactic Union does not take the mistreatment of its valued scientists lightly." "Ambassador, I don't have much time." Dr. Washington spoke quickly but clearly. "What's happening here is a sign of a bigger problem. New Horizons' security force has been systematically targeting non-humans and their human allies. I believe Officers Miller and Powell are part of a group called Earth First that's gaining influence within colonial administration." The ambassador's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "This is troubling, especially given the nature of your current research." Dr. Washington nodded. "The universal healing formula. If it works as expected, it could eliminate the biological advantages humans have used to justify their preferential treatment in the colonies, making all species truly equal in resilience and recovery," the ambassador finished. "No wonder certain people want to discredit you." A sharp pain caused Dr. Washington to wince. The stress of detention was causing contractions. Her daughter was coming early. "Ambassador, I need to ask for something unprecedented," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "I invoke Article 7 of the Sentient Rights Charter." The ambassador's form stiffened. "Doctor, Article 7 grants immediate Galactic Union protection and citizenship to any individual whose rights are being violated by their own government. No human has ever—" "I know what I'm asking," Dr. Washington interrupted. "And I know what it means. But what's happening here isn't just about me. It's about the future of human-alien relations throughout the galaxy." After a long moment, the ambassador nodded. "Very well, Dr. Washington. Article 7 is granted. The Galactic Union now recognizes you and your unborn child as protected citizens. Help will arrive within the hour." As the connection ended, Dr. Washington felt another contraction, stronger this time. She smiled despite the pain. Officer Miller had no idea what he had started by arresting a pregnant scientist with connections to the highest levels of the Galactic Union. The cell door slid open, and Officer Bennett rushed in. "Dr. Washington, you need to know they're coming for you. Chief Lawson ordered your transfer to the high-security wing." "It's all right, Officer Bennett," she replied calmly. "Help is on the way." The Galactic Union diplomatic ship Resolution appeared suddenly over New Horizon Colony, skipping all normal approach rules. Its huge shape, 3 times the size of Earth's largest warships, cast a shadow over the colonial capital. Inside the security station, alarms rang loudly as communication systems were taken over by a message broadcasting everywhere. "Attention, New Horizon Colony. This is Ambassador Zekathar of the Galactic Union. We are here to take Union citizen Dr. Amara Washington under Article 7 of the Sentient Rights Charter. Any interference will be considered an act of aggression against the Union." Officers Miller and Powell stared at the screen in shock as Chief Lawson burst into the station, his face twisted with anger. "What did you two do?" he demanded. "The Colonial Governor is getting urgent messages from Earth Command. The entire Galactic Union delegation has stopped diplomatic relations with humanity over this incident." "Sir, we were just following rules," Miller stammered. "She was entering restricted areas." "She has permission to enter every facility in this colony," Lawson shouted. "Did you even check her credentials properly?" Before either officer could respond, the station's doors slid open to reveal a group of Union representatives. A diverse group of alien species led by a tall, elegant Aquarian diplomat. "I am Emissary Nal Shea," the diplomat announced, her voice filled with authority. "We are here for Dr. Washington." Chief Lawson stepped forward. "This is a colonial matter, not anymore," Nalshay interrupted. Dr. Washington has been granted Union citizenship under Article 7, along with her unborn child. Your authority ended the moment your officers violated her rights. From her cell, Dr. Washington could hear the commotion. The contractions were coming faster now, her body preparing for birth ahead of schedule. When Officer Bennett helped her into the main area, she saw the shock on Miller's and Powell's faces. "Ambassador," she greeted Nalshay with dignity despite her discomfort. "Your timing is perfect." "Dr. Washington," the ambassador replied warmly. "The Union is ready to provide you with medical care and protection." Miller stepped forward. "You can't just take her. She's a human citizen of Earth colonies." "Actually," Dr. Washington interrupted, her voice clear and strong, "I am now the first human to hold dual citizenship with the Galactic Union, and my daughter will be the first, human born with full Union rights from birth." She turned to face Miller directly. "Your prejudice didn't just harm me, Officer Miller. It has changed the course of human-galactic relations forever. The Union has agreed to create an independent oversight committee to investigate all claims of species-based discrimination in human colonies." Chief Lawson's face turned pale. "That's an intrusion on Earth's sovereignty." "Only if you consider equal treatment an intrusion," Dr. Washington replied. She then doubled over as another contraction hit, this one stronger than before. Nalshay signaled to her medical team, who quickly moved to Dr. Washington's side with advanced equipment. "Your daughter is coming now, Doctor. We should go to our vessel immediately." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Washington looked back at the stunned officers. "My research will continue under Union protection. When it's complete, no species will have biological advantages over others. The foundations of prejudice will crumble." She placed her hand on her belly. "My daughter will be born into that new world, one where being human, alien, or mixed species no longer determines your worth." The Union medical team moved quickly, helping Dr. Washington onto a hovering stretcher. Behind them, Chief Lawson was arguing loudly with Emissary Nalshay about jurisdiction and diplomatic protocols, but the emissary simply raised a hand to silence him. "This matter is now beyond your authority, Chief Lawson. The Galactic Union High Council has unanimously voted to grant Dr. Washington's request. Your officers' actions have been documented and will be reviewed by an interspecies tribunal." As they moved toward the exit, Dr. Washington caught sight of Officer Bennett watching from the side. Their eyes met briefly, and she nodded in gratitude. He had risked his career to help her, showing that not all humans in the colony shared Miller's prejudice. Outside the security station, a crowd had gathered, humans and aliens alike, watching as the Union delegation emerged with Dr. Washington. Many in the crowd began to cheer, especially the non-human residents who had experienced similar treatment from colonial security. Dr. Washington felt another strong contraction as they approached the Union transport. The baby was coming faster than expected. The Union medical officer, a Zentari healer with 6 limbs and remarkable dexterity, scanned her vital signs with advanced equipment. "The child will arrive within the hour," the healer announced. "We must reach our medical bay quickly." As the transport doors closed, behind them, Dr. Washington caught a final glimpse of Officers Miller and Powell being confronted by angry colonial officials. Their actions had triggered not just a diplomatic incident, but a fundamental shift in power dynamics throughout the colony. The journey to the Union vessel took only minutes. Inside the ship's medical bay, Dr. Washington found herself surrounded by technology far more advanced than anything available in human colonies. The room adjusted its gravity, temperature, and lighting to optimal conditions for human childbirth. "Dr. Washington," Ambassador Zikathar said, entering the medical bay, "I've just received word that the Earth government has issued a formal apology for your treatment. They've also agreed to our terms. An independent oversight committee will be established to monitor all security operations in human colonies." Dr. Washington nodded through another contraction. "It's a start," she managed to say. "But real change will come through science, not politics." "Your research?" the ambassador asked. "Yes, the regeneration formula. Once completed, it will eliminate The last biological justification for human exceptionalism, our supposedly superior healing abilities. A sudden, intense contraction interrupted her words. The medical team moved into position as the Zentari healer announced, "The birth begins." No. What followed was a blur of pain and effort, but throughout it all, Dr. Washington remained focused on what her actions meant for humanity's future. Her daughter would be the first human born as a citizen of both Earth and the Galactic Union, a living bridge between species. As her daughter finally emerged into the world with a powerful cry, Dr. Washington felt a surge of hope, unlike anything she had experienced before. The Zentari healer gently placed the infant on her chest, and Dr. Washington looked down at the tiny face. "Hello, Zora," she whispered, having chosen a name that meant dawn in an ancient Earth language. "You're the beginning of something new." Ambassador Zakathar stepped closer, looking down at the child with an expression that translated across species as wonder. The first human child born under Union protection, her citizenship status alone will change galactic law. Dr. Washington smiled tiredly. "And when my formula is complete, she'll grow up in a galaxy where biological differences no longer justify prejudice." Outside the medical bay viewports, New Horizon Colony glittered against the backdrop of space. Somewhere down there, officers, Miller and Powell, were facing the consequences of their actions, but Dr. Washington felt no triumph in their downfall, only determination that their kind of prejudice would find no place in her daughter's future. "Ambassador," she said, cradling Zora, "I believe we have work to do." 3 months after Zora's birth, Dr. Washington sat in her new laboratory aboard the Galactic Union space station, Unity. The massive station orbited a neutral star system, serving as the main hub for scientific cooperation between all member species. Her lab was 3 times larger than the one she had at New Horizon Colony, equipped with technology from a dozen different worlds. Dr. Washington looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in a specially designed cradle that hovered beside her workstation. Zora had grown quickly these past months, already showing signs of enhanced cognitive development that the Union doctors attributed to her unique birth circumstances. Born in transit between Earth colonial space and Union territory, exposed to multiple species from her first breath, Zora's neural patterns were unlike any human infant previously studied. "Dr. Washington," a voice called from the lab entrance. "The preliminary trial results have arrived." She looked up to see her assistant, a young Zentari named Kel, holding a data tablet. Since joining the Union research team, Dr. Washington had assembled a diverse group of scientists from across the galaxy, each bringing unique perspectives to her regeneration formula project. "Thank you, Kel," she said, taking the tablet. As she reviewed the data, her eyes widened. "These results, they're better than we predicted." "Yes, Doctor," Kel replied, the membranes around his neck flushing blue with excitement. "The formula successfully accelerated cellular regeneration in all 7 test species. Recovery rates are now identical across the board." Dr. Washington scrolled through the data, hardly believing what she was seeing. Her formula, what she now called the Universal Regeneration Formula, had effectively eliminated one of the main biological differences that humans had long cited as proof of their superiority. With this treatment, a human, a Zentari, an Aquarian, and any other sentient species would heal from injuries at exactly the same rate. "We need to run one more set of trials before presenting to the Union Science Council," she said, already planning the next steps. "But Kel, do you understand what this means?" The young Zentari bobbed his head. "It means prejudice based on biological resilience can no longer be justified." "Exactly." Dr. Washington smiled, looking down at her sleeping daughter. "It means Zora will grow up in a very different galaxy than I did." Her communication panel chimed with an incoming call. When she accepted it, Ambassador Zekathar's face appeared on the screen. "Dr. Washington," the ambassador greeted her. I'm not interrupting your work." "Not at all, Ambassador. In fact, we've just received promising results from our latest trials." "Excellent news," Zekathar replied. "But I'm calling about another matter." The Earth Colonial Administration has made a formal request for you to testify in the hearing against Officers Miller and Powell. Dr. Washington frowned. I thought they had already been disciplined. They were removed from their positions, yes. But after what happened with you, dozens of other victims, both human and non-human, came forward with similar stories of abuse. The case has grown much larger, becoming a symbol of the systemic problems in colonial security forces. Dr. Washington glanced at Zora, then back at the screen. When would they need me to testify? The hearing begins next week on New Horizon. Your presence would be influential, but the Union Council understands if you prefer not to return to the colony. She considered this for a moment. Part of her wanted to stay focused on her research, to leave the unpleasant past behind. But another part knew that real change required both scientific advancement and social justice. I'll go, she decided. But I want Union protection for myself and Zora. And I want to bring my research team to present our findings to the colonial scientific community while we're there. The ambassador's expression showed approval. The Union will arrange everything. This return will be very different from your last experience on New Horizon. 1 week later, Dr. Washington stood at the viewport of a Union diplomatic vessel as it approached New Horizon colony. The sprawling settlement looked the same from orbit, but she knew much had changed since her departure. News of her treatment and subsequent Union citizenship had triggered protests and reforms throughout Earth's colonial territories. The case had become a flashpoint for discussions about prejudice, police powers, and interspecies relations. Zora was secured in a carrier on her chest, looking out at the approaching colony with curious eyes. At 3 months old, she was already more alert and aware than typical human infants, tracking movement and responding to multiple languages. We're beginning our descent, Doctor, the ship's captain informed her. Union security teams have already secured the landing area and your accommodations. Thank you, Captain, she replied, feeling a mix of emotions as they neared the colony. This was where she had faced discrimination and danger, but also where she had taken a stand that changed the course of human galactic relations. The landing was smooth, and when the ship's doors opened, Dr. Washington was surprised to see a large crowd gathered at the spaceport. Unlike the angry faces she had feared, many were holding signs welcoming her back and supporting justice. Humans and aliens stood side by side, a visual representation of the change already taking place. At the front of the crowd stood a familiar face, Officer Kyle Bennett, though he wore a different uniform now. As Dr. Washington descended the ramp, with Zora, Bennett stepped forward. Dr. Washington, he greeted her with a respectful nod. Welcome back to New Horizon. I've been assigned as your liaison during your stay. Officer Bennett, she replied warmly. Though I see you've been promoted. He smiled slightly. Actually, I'm not with Colonial Security anymore. After what happened, I joined the new Oversight Committee. We're rebuilding the security force from the ground up, with equal representation from all species. Dr. Washington nodded approvingly. And Officers Miller and Powell? Bennett's expression grew serious. They're waiting at the Justice Center. The hearing begins tomorrow. They're facing multiple charges of abuse of power and species-based discrimination. As they walked through the spaceport, Dr. Washington noticed the changes all around her. New signage in multiple languages, security officers of various species working together, and a general atmosphere of cooperation that hadn't existed before. Your actions changed everything, Bennett said quietly as they reached the transport. After you left, people started speaking up. The Union's involvement forced Earth to acknowledge the problems in the colonies. New policies were implemented almost overnight. Dr. Washington shifted Zora in her carrier. Change was long overdue. I just happened to be the catalyst. Your daughter is the first human child with Union citizenship, Bennett noted, looking at Zora with interest. She'll grow up with opportunities no human has had before. That's the point, Dr. Washington replied. She represents what's possible when we move beyond prejudice. And tomorrow, I'll face the officers who thought arresting a pregnant scientist would silence her. Instead, they helped create a future they never imagined. As their transport moved through the colony toward her accommodations, Dr. Washington held Zora close. knowing that her testimony tomorrow would not just be about seeking justice for herself, but about securing a better future for her daughter and all who would come after. The Justice Center of New Horizon Colony was filled to capacity. Humans and aliens from all over the colony had come to witness the historic hearing. Dr. Washington sat in the front row, Zora sleeping peacefully in her carrier. Next to her sat Ambassador Zekathar and 2 Union security officers assigned to protect them. On the other side of the room, Officers Miller and Powell sat with their legal representatives. Miller looked thinner than Dr. Washington remembered, his face tight with anger. Powell kept her eyes down, avoiding looking at anyone in the room. The head judge, a respected human jurist named Eleanor Grant, called the hearing to order. Today, we examine serious allegations of abuse of power, unlawful detention, and species-based discrimination by former officers Frank Miller and Diane Powell of the New Horizons Security Force. Dr. Washington listened as the prosecutor outlined the case, describing not just her own experience but the stories of 17 other victims who had come forward after her case made the news. The pattern was clear. Miller and Powell had systematically targeted non-humans and humans who worked closely with alien species. When it was her turn to testify, Dr. Washington walked to the witness stand, feeling the eyes of everyone in the one room on her. She described the night of her arrest in clear, direct terms, from the moment the officers arrived at the lab to her decision to invoke Article 7 of the Sentient Rights Charter. Dr. Washington, the prosecutor asked, in your professional opinion, was there any legitimate security reason for your detention? No, she replied firmly. My credentials were valid. I had full authorization to access the laboratory. The only reason for my detention was Officer Miller's prejudice against humans who work closely with non-human species. Miller's lawyer stood up to cross-examine her. Dr. Washington, isn't it true that you were on approved maternity leave at the time of the incident? My maternity leave was scheduled to begin the following week, she replied calmly. Officer Miller saw that in the system but chose to ignore the dates. And isn't it also true that you used your scientific connections to escalate a simple misunderstanding into an interplanetary incident? Dr. Washington's eyes narrowed. I used legal means to protect myself and my unborn child from unlawful detention and potential harm. The fact that those legal means involved the Galactic Union highlights how serious the situation was. The questioning continued for over an hour. Through it all, Dr. Washington remained composed, even when Miller's lawyer tried to suggest that her research itself was dangerous to human interests. My universal regeneration formula benefits all species equally, she stated. The only threat it poses is to the false notion that humans are biologically superior. When she returned to her seat, Ambassador Zekathar leaned over. You spoke with great dignity, Doctor. The Union Council will be pleased with how you represented our shared values. Next, former Officer Powell surprised everyone by asking to make a statement. She walked slowly to the stand, her shoulders hunched. I want to apologize, she began, her voice barely audible. To Dr. Washington, to all the others we targeted, and to the colony. I followed Officer Miller's lead because it was easier than standing up for what was right. I let prejudice guide my actions and people suffered because of it. She looked directly at Dr. Washington for the first time. When I saw you in that cell, 8 months pregnant and still denied medical attention, I knew what we were doing was wrong, but I didn't speak up. I'm sorry. A murmur ran through the crowd. Powell's admission strengthened the case against both officers, but her remorse seemed genuine. Dr. Washington found herself nodding slightly in acknowledgement. Officer Miller, however, showed no such remorse when it was his turn to speak. He stood stiffly at the witness stand and declared, I was doing my job protecting human interests in a colony that's being overrun by alien influence. Dr. Washington and her kind are the real threat, trying to eliminate what makes humans special. His words caused an uproar in the courtroom. Judge Grant had to call for order several times. Dr. Washington remained calm, bouncing Zora gently when she stirred from the noise. After hearing all testimony, Judge Grant announced that she would deliver her ruling the next day. As people filed out of the courtroom, Dr. Washington was approached by a group of scientists from the colony's research division. Dr. Washington, their spokesperson said, "We've been following your work on the universal regeneration formula. Would you consider giving a presentation to our team while you're here?" She smiled. "Actually, I brought my research team for exactly that purpose. We'd be happy to share our findings." Later that evening, Dr. Washington sat in her secure quarters, feeding Zora while discussing the day's events with Ambassador Cathar and former Officer Bennett. "Miller still doesn't understand what he did wrong," Bennett said, shaking his head. "But Powell might actually have a chance at redemption." "People can change," Dr. Washington replied. "That's the whole point of what we're doing, showing that old prejudices don't have to define our future." Ambassador Cathar nodded thoughtfully. "The Union Council is watching this case closely. How New Horizon handles it will influence our relations with all human colonies." Dr. Washington looked down at Zora, who was watching the ambassador with curious eyes. At 3 months old, she showed no fear of alien features that many adult humans found strange or frightening. She was growing up in a world where such differences were normal. "Tomorrow isn't just about punishing Miller and Powell," Dr. Washington said. "It's about establishing that discrimination won't be tolerated anywhere in the galaxy, whether it comes from humans or any other species." The next morning, the Justice Center was even more crowded. News of the hearing had spread throughout the galaxy, with representatives from various worlds attending to witness the outcome. Judge Grant entered and called for silence. "After reviewing all testimony and evidence, this court finds former officers Frank Miller and Diane Powell guilty of abuse of power, unlawful detention, and species-based discrimination." She looked directly at the defendants. "Frank Miller, given your position of authority, the systematic nature of your actions, and your lack of remorse, you are sentenced to 5 years in a rehabilitation center, followed by a lifetime ban from any security or law enforcement position." Miller's face flushed with anger, but he remained silent. "Diane Powell, in light of your cooperation, your public apology, and your evident remorse, you are sentenced to 2 years of community service, working with interspecies aid organizations, plus mandatory cultural sensitivity training." Powell nodded, accepting her sentence. Judge Grant continued, "Furthermore, this court recommends a complete overhaul of security protocols in all Earth colonies, with oversight from multi-species committees to prevent such abuses in the future." As the judge concluded the hearing, Dr. Washington felt a sense of closure. Justice had been served, not just for her but for all who had suffered similar treatment. She looked around the courtroom at the diverse faces, human and non-human alike, and saw hope for a better future. 1 year later, Dr. Washington stood at the podium of the newly built Interspecies Medical Research Center on Galactic Union Headquarters Station. Beside her, in a special floating chair, her daughter Zora watched the crowd with unusual focus, for a 1-year-old. "Today we officially release the universal regeneration formula to all worlds in the galaxy," Dr. Washington began, addressing the large crowd of people from many different planets. "Today also marks 1 year since what many now call the Washington precedent." The audience clapped loudly. In the year since her detention and protection by the Galactic Union, Dr. Washington had become a symbol of cooperation between species and the fight against unfair treatment. This formula, which allows all thinking species to heal from injuries at the same rate, removes one of the last biological excuses for treating some species better than others, she continued. "But the medical breakthrough is only part of what we have achieved." She pointed toward a section of the audience where several humans sat with alien representatives. Among them was Kyle Bennett, now serving as Earth's representative to the Union's Colonial Oversight Committee. The incident at New Horizon Colony showed widespread unfair treatment that had infected not just individual officers, but entire systems, she said. In response, the Galactic Union created new protections for all citizens, no matter their species. And Earth, to its credit, chose reform rather than resistance. On the main screen behind her, numbers showed the progress. Complaints of species-based unfair treatment in human colonies had decreased by 78% in the past year. New Horizon Colony had completely rebuilt its security force, with Chief Lawson resigned and Officer Miller still serving his sentence in a rehabilitation center. My daughter Zora represents a new generation, Dr. Washington said, smiling at her child. She holds both human and Galactic Union citizenship by birth. She will grow up never knowing a world where your species determines your worth or future. The applause was thunderous. As it quieted, a reporter raised his hand. Dr. Washington, what happened to the officers who arrested you that night? Dr. Washington's expression remained calm. Former Officer Miller now attends mandatory education programs in the rehabilitation center. According to reports, he is slowly beginning to question his old beliefs. Former Officer Powell completed her first year of community service working with alien refugee groups. She has become an advocate for better training of security forces. She paused, then added, but this was never about punishing individuals. It was about changing systems. The oversight committees now ensure that no one, human or alien, faces unfair treatment under colonial law. That's the real victory. Another question came from an Arcturian journalist. Your daughter is the first human child with Union citizenship from birth. How has that affected her development? Dr. Washington beamed with pride. Zora has been exposed to multiple species, languages, and cultures from day one. Her brain patterns show unusual abilities. Union scientists believe she may develop mental abilities previously unknown in humans, a natural evolution from growing up in truly diverse environments. She lifted Zora from her chair, holding her daughter high for all to see. The child laughed happily, her dark eyes bright with intelligence. This is what happens when we move beyond unfair treatment, Dr. Washington declared. We don't just become more fair, we become more than we ever imagined possible. Humanity's future lies not in isolation but in friendship with the galaxy. As the ceremony ended, Dr. Washington stepped down from the podium to greet the delegates. Among them was Ambassador Zekthar, who had first answered her call for help. Your actions continue to affect the entire galaxy, the ambassador said. When those officers arrested you that night, they thought they were asserting human power. Instead, they started the most important advancement in relations between species in 100 years. Dr. Washington nodded, bouncing Zora gently in her arms. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the most unexpected moments, she replied. They arrested a pregnant scientist and expected me to obey. Instead, they got revolution. Zora reached out toward the ambassador with a tiny hand, and for the first time in recorded history, an Arcturian smiled in the human manner. The next generation, the ambassador observed, truly without prejudice. That, Dr. Washington agreed, is what will leave everyone speechless. After the ceremony, Dr. Washington took Zora to the observation deck of the station. Together they looked out at the stars and the ships coming and going, vessels from hundreds of worlds carrying people of all shapes, sizes, and origins. This is your inheritance, little one, Dr. Washington whispered to her daughter. A galaxy where difference is celebrated, not feared. Her communication device beeped with an incoming message. It was from Diane Powell, the former officer who had helped arrest her. Dr. Washington, Powell's message began, I wanted you to know that I just finished setting up a new training program for security officers across 3 Earth colonies. We're teaching them to recognize and overcome hidden prejudice. Your case is our primary teaching example. I can never undo the wrong I did to you, but I'm trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes. Thank you for showing me a better way. Dr. Washington smiled as she read the message. This was the real victory. Not just policy changes or scientific breakthroughs, but the transformation of hearts and minds one person at a time. She looked at Zora, who was watching a group of alien children playing in a nearby recreation area. There was curiosity in her daughter's eyes, but no fear, no sense that they were different or strange. To Zora, diversity was the natural state of the universe. One day, Dr. Washington said softly, everyone will see the world as you do. As if understanding her mother's words, Zora smiled and pointed to the stars beyond the viewport. Dr. Washington nodded. Yes, little one. That's where we're going next. There are still many worlds that need the message of unity we bring. She thought about how far they had come from that night in the holding cell. What had started as an act of prejudice had become a catalyst for change throughout the galaxy. The road ahead would not be easy. Old prejudices died hard. And there would always be resistance to change. But standing there with her daughter, looking out at the infinite possibilities of the universe, Dr. Washington felt nothing but hope. "Ready for our next adventure?" she asked Zora, who babbled happily in response. Together, mother and daughter turned from the viewport and walked toward their future, a future where the actions of two prejudiced cops had accidentally helped create a more just and united galaxy for all species.